All right. With that, Thursday is here. Maybe other people were dancing in their cars at their desks. I don't know. But Amber, I gave you a little shake there. That's the best I could do. How's everybody doing out there? We got
I
some.
was dancing with you while making
All right.
breakfast.
All right. Oh, making breakfast in the kitchen. All right. All right. Um, well, I've got some interesting, a couple of different interesting articles that I read over the last 24 hours to share with you guys. So interested to dive into that. But we'll open up to the floor. Anybody have anything pressing going on a transaction of theirs? Something unique happened to you that you just can't wait to share with this group? Amber, what do you got?
So this weekend, my son graduated, so I had people cover some of my showings. One of the clients wanted to put an offer in on a property that's in a trust. The MLS stated that they had a passing Title V. I, of course, before writing the offer, called the listing agent, got all the information. They were just waiting for paperwork. So that was um, Sunday, I believe. So as of last night, we still did not have an answer. I had been following up with her. I guess the seller was in England, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, last night comes to light that they, the seller had a piece of paper from a supposedly Title V company that stated visual pass. I said, does they mean conditional pass? Like, but I don't think there is such a thing as, yeah, they never, so she talks to them. They never did the Title V. I guess they looked, I don't know what the hell they were looking at. There was no excavation done, yada, yada, yada. So they said, we're going to have it redone by somebody on Tuesday. So the 17th. So, because the attorneys got involved, their attorney got involved and wanted everything rewritten with new dates. And she's like, oh, no, no, we'll just wait till Tuesday. And me and my client were like, no, because what's to say that you're not going to continue showing and get a backup offer? Either accept our offer or we walk away. And then if something happens with Title V, we'll figure it out. So I luckily got on Chat GPT and kind of wrote some sort of addendum. So the attorney has to look it over. He'll probably rewrite it his own way, and hopefully we'll get this under agreement. But I was just weird that I've never seen someone write visual pass on a Title V.
Yeah, that's a first for me as well. That I don't even know what would you even be looking at to give it any sort of a visual without looking into the system. So very weird. Lauren, I see your hand up. Obviously, if anybody else has heard of this visual pass or knows anything about what this visual pass might entail, would love to hear. Go ahead, Lauren.
So I know nothing about visual pass, but just a thought. Whenever there's a Title V led document, any of that, any pieces of paper that we need as a part of the transaction, if they are not included in the MLS as attachments, even if the agent says they have them or the sell side says they have them and they're not there at the time of putting in the offer, it is always suggested that it is written into that additional provision section, seller to provide this, seller to provide passing title V prior to close, seller to provide lead pay disclosure for buyer to review and accept, anything like that. So just important to have in there. It saves a step from having to rewrite documents or chase things down. It just makes everything really clear from the beginning.
Well, I did write that in, but what happened was the attorney, because they didn't want the sellers to sign it because, we had 7 days after the offer to do inspections, but now the inspection on the Title V isn't going to be done until such and such a date. They said they didn't want the buyer doing all the inspections and then not having passing Title V. So it was in there. So that's my thought as well, but the attorney wants it all redone or something.
So, my thoughts, if you have that as a term in your addendum, it stands separately from the home inspections on the property. right? So we have the clause for home inspections on the property. We also have this additional clause that says the sellers are to provide a passing Title V. So I would think that you could still do your inspections on the timeline that you have, because that's an additional piece to the contract that we had written.
Martin,
Yes, attorney. That's all I'm going to say is
yeah.
attorney doesn't want it done that way. I thought that would be fine too, but I don't know.
Martin, I just saw your comment here. If it was a newer septic, was there a reason why you're asking?
Yeah, because if it's a newer septic, it doesn't need a Title V, but I think it's just called a compliance. So I don't know if that's what their visual they're saying. Because we had one that sold up in Tolland last year. Same thing. It was built less than a year ago, so it didn't need a Title V. It just needed the compliance.
No, this is the house from like the 60s, so that was not the case, unfortunately.
Okay.
Let's just you started off, and I thought this was going down the road of like when agents cover showings for you. I thought there was going to be a disaster story there. Does anybody just want to kind of share from having an agent cover, or something that happened, a miscommunication when you had an agent cover? Obviously, it's just super important to make sure that the agent that's covering understands maybe at least a little bit about your clients, that your clients are made aware that, hey, this is, if it's a newer agent or it's an inexperienced agent, whatever, hey, just to let you know, they're just going to be opening the door. You're still, coming to me if you have any questions or what, et cetera, to take a little bit of the pressure off of a newer agent by setting the right expectations with your client. Because I can see that going wrong, where you have somebody cover, they fumble, and now you've lost a client. So I don't know if anybody wanted to share anything around that, but again, I think just communications are key here. Anybody have a horror story or something? Hey, I'll never do that again on a agent covering my showing or covering an open house. I think that one obviously needs a little bit more upfront legwork. We can't have agents covering open houses that are showing up 5 minutes before the open house. They don't know how many bedrooms. They don't know the list price. They don't know, type of fuel on the property. Does it have solar? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Check the MLS. I don't know. Check the MLS. Those are not good answers. That's not going to come across as professional. And I know even the listing agents have been known to do this. Like, you got to know your stuff. These people that are coming through, one, they could be potential buyers for you. Two, they could be neighbors that could be potential sellers for you. So you really got to look like a professional when you're out there hosting an open house. And if you're covering for somebody, you can obviously study the MLS and know that inside out, but you really got to talk to the listing agent and say, hey, is there anything outside of what's in the MLS that I really should know about this property? Lauren.
So lots of kind of thoughts about this and not knowing the properties that you're going into. This should be true for showings, for coverings, for open houses, for all of the above. Like, spend a few minutes knowing what property you're going into. If you walk into one and they say, what's the heat source here? And you're like, I don't remember on this one, right? I don't know the age of this house. I don't know if we're on septic or public. Like, they're gonna ask. So it is important that we know. And then as far as horror story, I remember we had an incident at one time where an agent needed a showing covered. Another agent said they would cover it, never showed up to that showing, lied to our agent, said that they did, right? And it just became a whole thing. So, like, they said that they showed up. The list agent was like, no, nobody showed up. The clients did, because it was accompanied showings. And so, I showed them the property, but there was definitely nobody there. And this other agent lied to the initial agent, said that they were there, said it went good. It was wild.
A wonderful world of real estate. Anybody else have a comment, question regarding covering showings or passing a client or any of that? All right. Also wanted to just chat about something that came up on one of our transactions. Had an agent get a buyer's agreement last year fairly quickly, maybe 20 showings ish, put the client under agreement, supposed to close end of December 2024. You know, did everything that they should do, including putting something into the contract that the seller was to provide permits for a finished basement. So seller kept delaying on producing the permits, but said they had them, that they pulled them. Then they went away on vacation. And then day of the closing, decided, you know what, I'm going to be honest with you guys, no permits were pulled for this work. So I don't know how much more could have been done on our side. But maybe we could have, called the town to see if permits were pulled if we start to get nervous, into a transaction like this. Because here's what ends up happening: buyer loses faith in the agent, and is concerned. You know how it is. Like even when you're doing your job, something doesn't go right, their offer doesn't get accepted, et cetera. They can think it's all on you. And in this case, buyer was able to submit a termination agreement. Release of funds happened. Um, and what the attorney for the seller recommended was, hey, we'll release those funds, but we want the buyer to sign something that says he's not coming after anybody for anything else above and beyond the deposit. That made the buyer feel a little uneasy as well about the agent. Again, it's just something that the seller attorney had suggested and wanted before they were willing to release those funds. I can see both sides. Um, so buyer ends up, they were moving here from out of the area, and buyer ends up just telling the agent, you know what, we're decided not to move to the area. Meanwhile, 3-4 months go by. Buyer is still under a buyer's contract. We realize that the buyer has now gone under contract with another agent on another property. Try and confront the buyer, and now the buyer is threatening to sue for all of the missteps that the agent took and the misrepresentation, and you didn't have my best interests in mind, and the fiduciary duty that you had to me was not done, and it can spiral pretty quickly. So I guess the moral of the story is, if it's something that just seems to keep getting delayed, please try and push the envelope. Is there an extra phone call? Is there something extra that you can do? Because it's not like we didn't do our job. We knew about this right up front. We even got it into the agreement and said it was a contingency of the agreement. But maybe we could have pushed a little bit harder during the transaction, just looking back in hindsight, to try and get those documents. So, and I don't know all the details. It could be that our agent did push really hard throughout that, and it just kept getting delayed. And that's why I said, okay, are there alternatives? Can we call the town ourselves? Oh, there's never been a permit pulled, right? And meanwhile, this is for a scenario where, as you all know, it's for a basement. Probably 50% of basements that have been finished have no permits pulled for that. There's really not much to it at that point, and a lot of people just finish their basements. So at the end of the day, and this happened to be a contractor. That was the other thing that had our agent feeling like, oh, they're used to pulling permits. They probably pulled the permits, So yeah, this homeowner, the person that owned the property, happened to be a contractor on top of it. So, Amber.
We actually had one of these way back when we were over this, where someone had bought was selling their, I believe it was like a condo or something, or a townhouse. And when they bought the property, the basement was finished. And I don't know if they did permit checks or whatever, but what ended up happening was, um, the seller had to replace the water heater and the furnace or something when and had to pull permits, of course. When they came back through and checked, they had to rip out the entire basement because it was not permitted, and the town wanted to see behind the walls. This was in Worcester County, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and we've talked about depends on the town, how crazy they want to get. Some are going to say, open those walls. I want to see all the electrical work. I want to see all the plumbing work. Um, I want to see if there's insulation or not. So yeah, you just never know how difficult the building department is going to be with regarding to um, getting permits on older renovations. Margareta.
Good morning. Actually, this is somewhat similar, but it's actually something what happened to me yesterday. I've been waiting for appraisal, and we have quite time to closing because it's not happening until July. But I have a house at stage. I'm like, where's this appraisal? Where's the appraisal? I let the other agent, the buyer agent, look into this, and she's like, I can't get a hold of lender. I'm like, give me the number. I couldn't get a hold number of the lender as well. I asked for the supervisor. And the supervisor got me appraisal this week. So, like you have to be on top of stuff like that and just don't take no for an answer. And yeah, it wasn't the easiest to get the supervisor's name, but there's always a supervisor. Ask for one.
Yeah, I love that. You take the bull by the horns and drive the bus and get what you want. Ask, ask, ask. Be relentless. Be resilient. Um, and that could be the difference maker in that client being happy, a lawsuit happening or not, etc. So yeah, Amber just says, get it closed any way you can. That's what the best agents do, 100%. Also, just seeing in the chat here, check your chat channel. Meg posted, we've talked about Brokers Opens before. If you've never been to a Brokers Open and you wanted to experience one, there is one by a real agent, actually Kim Kehoe, today in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And she put the link in the chat if you wanted to attend. Wanted to share another piece of information, the future of appraisals. I think this might have been a NAR article that I was taking a peek at, and it basically looks like Fannie and Freddie are going to start moving to, I don't want to say AI based, but non-in-person appraisals to improve efficiency, lower costs, and I guess one of the reasons that they stated was to reduce appraisal bias. I think we've all heard that potential appraisal bias is going on these deals. So, so here's just kind of some of the things that the article pointed out that I wanted to share with you. So many properties will no longer, and I don't know how they're going to decide which properties, but probably the more standard the house is, your 3-bedroom ranch, where you've got 100 comps, we probably don't need an appraiser to go out there. It's those more unique properties where maybe an in-person appraisal is going to be more important. So alternatives will include desktop appraisals, hybrid appraisals, or automated valuation models, or AVMs. They're talking about property data collectors becoming part of the new norm. So these are trained third-party data collectors, not necessarily an appraiser, that will gather on-site property info. And then appraisers will then evaluate remotely using that data. Agents could be asked to help, potentially paid to help, to collect that data. And the goal here is obviously speed, faster valuation process to help deals move quicker. Agents should be aware of who's coming in to collect the data and how it may affect the listing timeline. And there, could be a little way for you guys to make a couple of bucks potentially here moving forward. So looks like this should be in the works. If it's not already, I'm curious if anybody has experienced anything like this. Anybody have a deal where the appraiser did not go out to the property?
I did on a homeowner's, the storm that happened in March. All I did was send photos, and I sent, I know it's not the same, but sent photos and sent estimates that I had already received, and they never came out to look at the property. I thought that was a little crazy, but whatever.
That was on an insurance claim?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, on an insurance claim. I'm still waiting for them to finish it up because I'm still waiting for the siding people
Yep.
to get me my estimate either today or tomorrow. So, but yeah, they said just send photos, send what you have for estimates, and they didn't even come out.
Yeah. Yeah. Insurance claims, it's pretty common. I mean, that was my first job out of college. So that's 2001. And we were seeing that happen where the insurance companies were cool. Just send us the photos, send us your estimate. If it was reasonable, they were paying those claims. Meg.
I had one, I think it was last year, maybe the year before now, where a company wanted to come out to one of my listings and basically do like what they called a whole house scan for the appraisal. And basically, I think it was one of these instances where they were going to collect all the data and then send it off to someone who would perform the appraisal via desktop. I hadn't ever experienced that before, so I did push back on it because my fear was, we wouldn't get the accurate, fully appraised value because, and not only that, but the gentleman who was trying to set it up said it would take over 3 hours to do a scan of the house, and I thought that was a little intrusive to the home sellers at the time. So we were at that point in time, we were able to push back and get just a regular appraisal scheduled.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting, right? Will we have the ability, like Meg is saying, so and this is driving the bus, right? This is exactly what we're talking about. I think a lot of agents would have said, "Oh, okay, if that's what the process is, let's do it," right? In this case, Meg's going, I don't know. Like, this is a pretty unique property. I'd really like somebody to get their eyes on it. I'm afraid that it's not going to appraise if you don't see the property for what it is. So no, and so this is a great piece of information for you guys to have in case you see this automated stuff come up in the future, right? Is it a 3-bedroom ranch that hey, this is going to be no problem, or is there something about this property that, man, you use an automated system and this might not come out so well, right? You're not going to get the views or how it sits in the neighborhood, the spot in the neighborhood that it's in, the street that it's on. It's just not going to come through exactly with just an automated model. And will we have the ability to push back? So that's a great share, Meg. Anybody else have thoughts on the automated system? I mean, what's your guys' thoughts most recently? If I'm assuming every time you list a property, you're taking a look at that Zestimate. How close are these estimates these days? I have not looked. Is it still, hey, it could be, 10, 20% in either direction, or is it starting to get to now where it could be 5% in either direction? Would love to hear some thoughts around this. Go ahead, Adam.
Morning. Hey. Yeah, I think for your house that's been updated, it's got the wood floors, the granite countertops, the stainless appliances, paint on the walls, no wallpaper. I think the Zestimate is right there, like within 10,000, for the most part. I think when you got grandma's house and you see this estimate, I don't think it's going to be accurate. You could be off 50, 60,000. But if you're listing a house that's been updated, which is typically what I do, it's scarily accurate.
So basically, your guess is that all of these models they have to take a guess at condition, right? Because there's just no way
Correct.
to know condition. So your belief is that Zestimate is showing the house in its best light. Hey, this is kind
Yep.
of if you're fully updated, this is what you should be able to get for your house, and most likely, then most of these would only be high. They're not going to be tend to be low.
Correct. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
going to be high, but I don't think it's that, with AI and stuff, I don't think it's going to be too far off to um, for some kind of computer system to be able to figure out if a house has been updated or not. Big one is the white trim versus the brown trim that really dates a house, right? White or black appliances date the house, brown cabinets date the house. So I don't think it's going to be that hard. I was using ChatGPT this morning I had a picture of someone holding a stuffed animal, and I wanted to see if ChatGPT could tell me what animal it was holding, and it told me the expression on the face of the person holding the animal was in a joking manner because it was something like it was an adult holding a little child's toy, and it's like it couldn't tell me what it was because the back of the toy was facing the camera, but it was like, oh, it looks like this person's holding it in a joking manner, and I was like, this thing is literally reading facial expressions. It's mind-boggling. Side story there.
Yeah. Well, here's another question that I don't know the answer to. Maybe you guys could give me some insight. So if the Zestimate is assuming best case scenario for the properties, right? Because it doesn't have interior pictures. The only interior pictures it has to go off of is the last time the property got listed, right? So does the Zestimate stay up on a property after you've listed it? And does it adjust once it sees the interior photos? Does anybody know the answer there?
I can speak to that one too. For the most part, it adjusts within $1,000 to the list price, um, unless it's a significant jump, right? So if I buy a house, I put considerable work into it. Let's just say I buy it for 200 and list it for 350. The Zestimate doesn't necessarily go to the list price, but if I list a house where the Zestimate was 330 and I listed at 350, it usually matches it. That's what I've found. So
the first answer is the Zestimate does still show after a property is listed. There's an on-market list
definitely, yep.
price, and the Zestimate is
Yep.
still there.
Yep.
But what you're saying though is, if you buy that the property that you're going to flip, so it's in disrepair, you
Yep.
buy it at 200, you put 50,000, and you list it for, let's say, 350. It doesn't, and let's say the Zestimate was, I don't know, 300 going in. It doesn't look at those photos and go, oh, 350.
No, it'll
No.
say, hey, that's way too big. Basically, it'll say it's way too big of a jump. We're going to short it a little bit.
Yep.
My house, for an example, we put a pool in. It was a significant increase in the purchase price with the pool, but it didn't increase my Zestimate by the amount of the new listing price.
Yep. Shaston.
So when you do like a listing, and I mean, because I think I'm just used to like not having it on there. When you go to list the price and everything and say the Zestimate comes out to be much lower, do you still show that Zestimate? I mean, is there a benefit to doing that? I understand like if the Zestimate shows higher than what you're listing it at, but if it shows lower, do you still leave that Zestimate there? Because I've always felt like a buyer, if they look at it and see the Zestimate's lower, their first thought is, oh, they're overpriced. So I always turn it off. Do you see a benefit of leaving it?
First, I mean, I didn't even know you could turn off the Zestimate on a listed property. So that is just a good share. It sounds like, I don't know if everybody knew you could even do that. That's what you're saying you can do?
Yeah, I never leave it up there. So like if you see a listing, there'll just be like 2 dash marks or something like that. It won't say anything for the Zestimate, and it just has your listing price. I never put the Zillow because I'm just afraid people will compare it.
So I know in MLS there's a box that says allow websites to come up with valuations. I'm assuming I don't know if Massachusetts MLS has that. I know Florida does.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's
okay,
what I use, and I just make sure that it never allows that comparison.
Yeah.
I just, I mean,
So
unless
Shaston,
like you were saying, go
so
ahead.
you're not going into Zillow and clicking something to turn it off.
No, this is actually, and I don't know if maybe it's whatever, it's through the IDX, I think. So if there's any sites that give like their estimate of valuation, there's an option to not put that in. So when I'm going through and filling out the MLS, I just always choose that option to not allow it to show, unless
Gotcha.
like, if this estimate says it's like
Yep.
$50,000 more and my
Yep.
comparables show me otherwise, then I'll leave it.
So does anybody know if this feature exists in Mass, Connecticut, or Rhode Island? Meg is just saying you can definitely do this in Smart MLS. So that's Connecticut. Meg, do you know for sure that you can't do it on MLS PIN?
I don't know one way or the other. I've never seen it as an option, but to be fair, I've never looked into it further either.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty critical, to be honest. I think you guys need to know what those estimates are. So Meg just put that she has started pulling all the online price estimates. I mean, I think the three that matter are Homes, Realtor, and Zillow for sure. Maybe Trulia as well. And then, you know, if you're liking the numbers, I think you let those numbers stay. If you're not liking those numbers, I think you got to make sure you're going into the MLS and turning this off. This is a great topic. Anybody else have any
Yeah,
insight on this stuff?
when I'm looking at it, I think it says IDX/VOW AVM, and you say yes or no. I
Yep.
always click no, and I can send like a picture of it. I don't know if I can put it in chat, but it might be displayed something different on the other MLSs, but it's the only one I'll say no to. Everything else, I think it says like display comments. Like, you have other options to show the property address and stuff. So it's in that section if you've got anything like that.
Yeah, well, you guys got your money worth today. That little nugget right there is super critical as a listing agent. So, Shaston, thank you. Shaston, you get, what do you want? You get the DJ air horn. How about that?
I love it.
Uh, well, I thoroughly enjoyed this one when we can add some nuggets like that and really change the ability for somebody to be a professional and go about their business and represent their sellers in a better way. There's nothing better than a little nugget like that. So, thank you guys all for your shares. I love what we're doing here. So we will do it once more tomorrow morning. Let's end the week strong. I hope you guys have a great Thursday. Take care.